Anyone who does not read lives just one life, but someone who reads, can live several lives. These are the words by Umberto Eco, which fell into my hands a few days ago, and I thought these are the greatest words to introduce the night, because I would say that everyone sitting here or watching us online have been living through many lives based on literature, funny, sad, long, short, lives which made us dream, many which made us think. And once we then put a book on the side and go back to reality, then we notice that it too has many facets. It can be very beautiful, it can be very tough, it can bring with it lots of challenges, personal challenges and social challenges. And in these few days we're going to come together in Frankfurt, bringing all the themes with us which move the world today. So many of them are very tough, many of these themes are very complicated, or things for which we simply are lost for words. But it's nice to see that these good, right words do exist, and they are hidden sometimes, thousands of them between the two ends of a book in the fairgrounds of Frankfurt, and they're waiting for us to read them, to try and understand them, or fail to understand them, or to spend a great time with them. And with this, I would like to welcome you and say hello to the opening event of Frankfurt Book Fair 2024. I'm very pleased to be your moderator again this year through this very special night. Mona Amesian is my name, and I would like to welcome not just you who are here locally and Frankfurt Congress Center, but also everyone who is watching us at home or wherever via the live stream. Hello to the world. And let me also welcome all the guests of honor from Italy. I have been practicing with a friend of mine who is Italian. Benvenuti alla Fiera di Libro di Francoforte. But that's the end of my Italian at the moment, but that doesn't matter, because as you know, and as you may have noticed, this event is being translated simultaneously by a fantastic team of interpreters whom we have today into Italian and into English. And so on the live stream you can change the subtitles in various languages, and we have sign language interpreting into English and German, so everyone can follow the event without any issues. So much for my general intro, and now for the official version, let me welcome to the stage the person who is doing his 20th year of directorship of the Frankfurt Buchmesse. Welcome, Juergen Boris. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased together to open the 76th Frankfurt Book Fair together with you. This year's guest of honor is Italy. I would like to welcome the Minister for Culture of the Italian Republic, Alessandro Giuli, and his delegation. Let me also welcome the State Minister for Culture and the Media, Claudia Roth. Thanks for coming. Dear representatives of the federal, state and local level, I would like to just mention a few names. I'm pleased to say that the Hessian Minister President Boris Rhein is here today and will speak to us later. I also would like to welcome the Hesse Minister for Business, Energy, Transport, Residential and Rural Areas, Kawi Mansouri, the Hesse Minister for Science and Research, Culture and Arts, Timon Gremmels, the State Secretary in the Hesse Ministry for Finance, and the Anti-Semitism Coordinator, Uwe Becker. From the city of Frankfurt, I would like to welcome Lord Mayor Mike Josef, who is going to also speak to you later. As well as the President of the City Council, Hilime Arslana, City Treasurer Bastian Bergerhoff, Business Secretary Stefanie Wüst, Councillor Dr. Ina Hartwig from the Division for Culture and Science, the Chair of the Local Representation of Foreigners, Yuma Smedov. I'm glad that today, for the first time, we can welcome the new Chair of the Board of the Jewish Community of Frankfurt, Mark Grünbaum. We have the Vice Minister for Culture here from Greece. Welcome, Iason Fotilas. And standing in for the representatives of the Diplomatic and Consular Corps, I would like to welcome the ambassadors of the Philippines, Chile, Switzerland, Singapore, Slovenia, and Cyprus. At this point, of course, a very special welcome goes to the ambassador of the current guest of honor, Italy, His Excellency Armando Varicchio. As literary speakers, Italy has chosen bestseller author Susanna Tamaro, the physicist and public intellectual Carlo Rovelli, and the philosopher Stefano Zecchi. Welcome. So what would Frankfurt Book Fair be without the publishers from all over the world? I would like to welcome the President of the International Publishers Association, Karin Panza, and the Secretary General, José Borguinho. Dear authors and publishers, translators and illustrators, dear prize winners and exhibitors, dear representatives of the media, dear guests. In a time dominated by conflicts and crises in the news, where every week we see demonstrations in the streets, where debates in culture and politics are becoming more inconsolable, you may ask the question, what good is reading? What is the role of a book fair? And which function is fulfilled by literature? At this point, I would like to quote Salman Rushdie, who said here at the Frankfurt Book Fair, "What is special in literature is it has no use, but it doesn't have to have any use. Literature can be useful, but it doesn't have to be useful. It can inspire us to make us think, but it doesn't have to. It can make us laugh, it can make us cry, it can make us mad. It creates pleasure and joy. Well, it brings out the human in us. It brings us closer to other people, and sometimes it drives us apart. Literature passes time, it makes us dream, and sometimes it takes us to a different place. All this can be done by literature, but it doesn't have to. Why do I say this? Because, especially in times of geopolitical conflict and heated public debates, we sometimes expect literature to deliver something, or we attribute something to it, instead of seeing the importance of literature in itself and to protect it from false appropriation. It's all about literary storytelling as a form of art, with all the artistic freedom which goes with it, because freedom of speech has always been the basis on which our industry is built. Without this freedom, no book can be written, no translation rights can be sold, no argument can be had about books. So what is the role of a book fair? It shows everything which can be done by literature. This morning, Elif Shafak reminded us of the force, of the power of literature at our press conference in the morning. She says literature must be an act of hope, an act of resistance, not through violence, but through the ability to remind ourselves of the fact that we are all human. Isn't this exactly what we need? Literature can give people a voice. It can make us adopt a different perspective. In the next 5 days, we will experience very lively, controversial debates, sometimes political ones, about books, about us as a society. We will argue with each other. It will be tough on substance, but always democratic in terms of our exchange. It's not about who speaks loudest. It's about listening to each other. It's about having discussions and talks openly, with an open mind, having an open exchange, respectfully perceiving the other's position. This is the idea of Frankfurt, the book fair as a platform for peaceful and democratic discourse, for authors, thinkers, illustrators, translators, publishers, journalists, and culture fans from all over the world. So it's along these lines that I would like to wish this fair a very good and perspective success.
Thank you, Juergen Boris, for this introduction. Yes, I think you will all agree when I say probably the book industry is extremely diverse. We are between tradition and modern times, between high literature and more kinds of softer entertainment, or to put it bluntly, I think we are all between facsimiles and TikTok hypes. Well, this is really a lot, and to process it is not easy. But the German book world in all its diversity can be found under one roof. And if you look at the doorbell of this house, it reads German Publishers and Booksellers Association. And when you ring the bell, do you know who opens? The lady, metaphorically speaking, that will join us on stage. I would like to invite Karin Schmidt-Friderichs, the president of the German Publishers and Booksellers Association, to the stage. Door opener for books. Well, I love that you called me that. Thank you. Minister Giuli, State Minister Roth, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues from all over the world. A few weeks ago, the Gottlieb Duttweiler Institute in Rüschlikon presented a study which concluded that the Swiss want more diversity. Well, they already have 4 languages, and because of their financial power, a lot of economic immigration. So you would think this will do. But no, when the researchers asked more questions, they learned that there is a lack of encounters with people who are different. Different in terms of age, in terms of ethnic origin, in terms of economic standing, or having a different opinion from their own. McKinsey, the management consultants, published a study in spring of this year, according to which companies that are diversified are over 60% more likely to be more profitable than the average. This effect apparently increased significantly in the crisis years since 2020. So why am I telling you this here and now? Because in a few minutes we will be opening a festival of diversity, because the world's biggest book fair here in Frankfurt is right this. Fact means fiction here, but unlike with fake news, clearly separated. Fiction is of high value at the book fair. It is reality sui generis and shows the diversity with which we look at our world, thanks to imagination and creativity. This is why Frankfurt Book Fair is also a celebration of the diversity of perspectives. Young and old meet here, digital nerds meet lovers of the printed, refined and well-designed, people from all over the world and more than 100 nations, people of different attitudes, opinions, religions, people of different sexual orientation and political persuasion. They all meet here in peace and united in their enthusiasm for books. However, not with rose-tinted spectacles, but by way of constructive debates. The exhibition grounds turns into an agora for the diversity of opinions, a meeting place, a place for exchanging opinions and for forming opinions. When we regard diversity, which has long been a social fact, as an opportunity, celebrate it as a gift, understand it as a wealth of natures, then we can grow with each other and together, each and every one of us and society as a whole. Thousands of different books form the framework for events, panels, discussions and debates. In order to make this successful and personally enriching, it takes a framework which this trade fair offers with around 4,000 exhibitors, but it also takes values, agreements and rules. Frankfurt Book Fair celebrates diversity. This is part of its DNA, and it demands respect for others and regarding their opinions. And you can also call this tolerance. Tolerance is the basis of democratic negotiation. Only when we really listen to others and try to understand the other person actively, comprehend arguments and conclusions, then we can respond or counter in a meaningful way. Prejudices and thought patterns prevent discourse. They degrade exchange and turn it into an exchange of blows, to a rhetorical power game and, in the worst case, personal injury. However, excessive subjective vulnerability, thinking like a victim, or self-limiting thought models prevent constructive discourse and provide the breeding ground for prejudices, hardened fronts, misunderstandings, or self-fulfilling prophecies. Those who are no longer able to meet their counterparts in society with trust because a view narrowed by vulnerability makes it impossible to negotiate with each other, is not protecting society or him or herself. Well, by calling for restriction and regulation or for a strong man or a strong woman, he or she is restricting the freedom in which we live, the freedom that generations before us fought for. Because those who are then supposedly in charge could soon be marching at full speed towards their own power. Frankfurt Book Fair is a place of casual and planned encounters, a place of cultivated exchange, surprising discoveries, and vivid enthusiasm for books. A place where everyone can be themselves, a place where the world meets to negotiate topics, discover talents and trends, and buy or sell title rights. We live in a free democratic country, and this cannot be taken for granted in a world where autocracy is on the rise and is growing stronger. We live in peace, and this cannot be taken for granted in a world of wars and trouble spots, and ultimately only despots and the arms industry benefit, never the people. We live in freedom of opinion and freedom of press, and this can also not be taken for granted. The work of Anne Applebaum, who we are honoring with the Peace Prize of the German book trade at the end of this book fair, is highly recommended in this context. For 4 years now, the German Publishers and Booksellers Association and 70 partner institutions have been organizing Freedom of Expression Week every May. This year, for the second time, the Hamburg Freedom of the Press Week is taking place, where our association is also involved. Because this freedom is the very foundation of democracy, and democracy is the foundation for free publishing. German Publishers and Booksellers Association has been committed, since it was founded in 1825, to freedom of the press and freedom of expression. The history of this association, celebrating its 200th anniversary next year, has been very volatile. During the Third Reich, the association lost its moral compass. This makes it all the more important for us today to defend the values of a free, democratic society. Next year, we will continue the history of the association under the heading New Chapters, and together with the industry, we'd like to discuss and tackle the important issues of the future. This includes AI. AI offers endless opportunities, including for the book industry. Language models based on statistical probabilities can support and assist, can take over standard tasks, can do a lot. But there is one thing so-called AI cannot do, not yet at least. Write texts that touch and move, that captivate, surprise, irritate or unsettle, move to tears or encourage people. The authors we are looking forward to seeing here in Frankfurt, and the translators who congenially transfer this content into other languages and thus make it accessible to people in other countries in a linguistically powerful and culturally adapted way. And I'd like to take the opportunity to extend a very special bienvenuti to the authors from Italy. I look forward to many discoveries and a new look at vibrant Italian literature. Talents like you are the driving force behind the industry and the book fair. Your spirit makes this week the highlight of the book fall or of the year as a whole. I wish you a brilliant book fair with enriching and moving encounters. Thank you.
Thank you, Karin Schmidt-Friderichs. We'll, of course, see you up on stage later when it comes to the hammer blows. Well, since 1975, the biggest international book fair has been held here in Frankfurt, and it's a special town, not just because for half a century it has a very big heart for books, but also because it brings together people from 180 nations. Just imagine this number. It's really very diverse indeed, and these people live with each other and next door to each other at times which are maybe colored by tension, be it international or national tension. And this diversity, of course, is very much a hallmark of Frankfurt Book Fair, but also vice versa. I think we noticed that once you walk through town, there's no way to ignore this event, no matter where you walk around. And that's why it's a pleasure for me to welcome the Lord Mayor of Frankfurt, Mike Josef.
Frau Staatsministerin Roth, Herr Staatsminister
Ms.
Giuli,
Roth and Mr. Giuli,
sehr geehrte Exzellenzen, meine Damen und
Prime
Herren.
Minister, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen,
Auf den Beginn der
we're really looking forward to the beginning of the 76th Book Fair. The Frankfurt Book Fair is a brand internationally. It stands for freedom, it stands for the freedom of speech, and we are extremely proud of this in Frankfurt. So it's with a great pleasure that we take note of the extension of the contract, Mr. Boris and Ms. Schmidt-Friderichs, between the Frankfurt Book Fair and Messe Frankfurt. So the Frankfurt Book Fair is part and parcel of Frankfurt, and it's part of our town. And since 1951, the biggest international book fair is held in the halls of Messe Frankfurt. And we would like to continue this tradition and this success story. Frankfurt has always been a city of the word. It's a city of the mind and of trade. It is where transport routes and data routes meet up, and Frankfurt has always been a city of exchange. And the book fair is the regular marketplace for free speech. It is a place of free speech, of encounter, of exchange. You can hear conversations about various subjects and different subjects. And when you walk around here, you can see nations, 180 nations represented here. And the book fair image is even more diverse than the city of Frankfurt is. So Frankfurt and book fair, they are really part of the same story. And I think we complement each other quite well. That's why it's important to us as a city of Frankfurt that the book fair should be spread out all over town. The reading festival Open Books is also a statement that we stand by Frankfurt as a city of literature and culture. It brings together book lovers from all ages. This year, Open Books is celebrating 90 events with 160 authors, and for the first time there is an open stage for Frankfurt-based authors. So it celebrates books and literature. At this point, I would like to thank the Cultural Office and Book Fair for their great cooperation, and the fact that an Open Books Festival can be celebrated here, which defends the freedom of speech not just at the book fair but also in the whole of the city of Frankfurt. This is more important than ever, so thank you very much to all those who have organized this event. Our guest of honor, Italy, you could say, is the favorite destination of Germans as such. So that's our focal theme. The pavilion, or the Italian piazza, is reflected or has a mirror image. It's the escape room on Paulsplatz. So this is how the guest of honor country can be experienced through the eyes of another Italy lover, the most famous son of our city, Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. There is a strong need to have a first-hand experience of culture. Culture and arts bring people together, and that's what I would like to say, that we should realize for all our diversity, there are more things uniting us than separating us, and culture manages to overcome all our differences. That's the essential thing about culture. It brings out what unites us. It helps us find what unites us and define what unites us. That's why I would like to say it's always bad if there is a world which is growing together. It's always a bad sign if you try and cut corners and make savings on the back of culture.
Ort, an dem das geschriebene Wort lebendig wird, ist das Theater.
One other place where the written word comes live is the theater. We need theaters. Drama needs theater. Sometimes there's too much drama in politics, but that's a different subject. It enables joint experience in a world where many people are becoming more isolated and lonely because the media are only pseudo-social. So this is an invitation to confront the thinking of other people. Through reading, you can learn empathy. It's an ability which is sadly lacking in our debates today. We need it more than ever. And having an understanding for the other person, changing perspective. When we read books, we start reading other people's minds. It's a kind of empathy training in a very tense world where sometimes heated ideological debates are held. And it makes us focus on what unites us. The word is a powerful instrument. It can unite people. It can divide people. That's why the Frankfurt Book Fair is not just a big marketplace for licenses and tomorrow's bestsellers. It's also the place where we measure the state of health of democracy and of human rights. And that's why this event, this book fair, is so crucial for our society, in our town, but also in our country and beyond. The book is always good to spread the idea of freedom, as we know. There are many regions in the world where journalists and writers are suppressed, are persecuted to the present day. Where the freedom of speech is suppressed, the political and social freedom is also in a poor state. Reading books creates community, and this is what we need more than ever. We need a sense of community, and this is also what is fostered by the book fair. At the end, let me also talk about a trip I took a few weeks ago. I went to Leipzig, our partner city, and we celebrated the peaceful revolution 35 years ago. There were important people represented there from politics, from the partner town Kiev. Vitaly Klitschko was present, and there were people there who took to the streets 35 years ago. The civil rights activists, and the courage and determination of these civil rights activists who are fighting for freedom and democracy, for the freedom of speech, they are still a role model to us today. They have taken their own destiny in their own hands, because for all the criticism, that's what's good about democracy as a state, as a form of state. We have the possibility to take our destiny into our own hands. That's why I think we need a stable democracy. We need discourse, arguments. That's all part and parcel of democracy. But the main thing which is given to us by democracy is freedom, freedom of speech. And for that, it takes to be very bold to have this freedom of speech. And this was the courage shown by the civil rights activists 35 years ago in Leipzig and elsewhere. That's why a language creates a space for thinking. And for this, we need democratic conditions. So welcome to the 76th Fair.
Well, the international book world as a guest in Frankfurt. But, of course, it automatically also looks to the federal state where we are, the state of Hesse, which is represented by its prime minister. And he's the top representative of this state, and he would like to say a few words as well. So a very warm welcome to Boris Rhein. Minister Giuli, ladies and gentlemen, let me be quite brief. Mr. Boris followed the protocol with his welcome, so I will be very brief. On behalf of the state and the government of the state of Hesse, I'd like to welcome you to the Frankfurt Book Fair in the year of 2024, and a very special welcome to our guests of honor from Italy. And I think I may say so, you heard it from the Lord Mayor, but I can say it on behalf of the state of Hesse. Yes, we are very proud of this Frankfurt Book Fair. Also, but not only because of its international importance for the world of literature, but for a very special reason, because it is a very important and lively place of freedom, a place of thinking, of freedom of speech and expression. And we felt this when we heard the other presentations. It's a place of living democracy. And you also see it in discussions prior to, during, and after the book fair. It's a place of living democracy. And since the existence of the book, despite all the developments we've seen, it has not lost any of its fascination. And I'd like to stress fascination. And this is because the book is so powerful, so important. And it's also because the book has a lot of power. Books store and spread knowledge. Books make sure that you can take a differentiated approach regarding certain facts, that you can form your own well-founded opinion. So in a nutshell, we can say books spread words and values. And for a diverse and free society, this is crucial. For a living together with respect, not without respect. I made a mistake before, sorry. So this is crucial. And discourse is also crucial here. And let me wrap this up. The book, diversity, free society are crucial for our society. But ladies and gentlemen, let's not be deluded. Everywhere in Europe, liberal democracies have come under pressure. In Germany as well, so we shouldn't be misled here. The geopolitical situation is difficult. We have simultaneous crises in an enormous number, but we also have challenges internally. And this stresses liberal democracies. This is why I clearly state, ladies and gentlemen, we have to be watchful. Because history has shown one thing. Democracies don't just die in a burst. Well, normally it's not a revolution or a strike. No, this is not the rule. No, ladies and gentlemen, democracies die very, very slowly. And I think this is much more dangerous because many people only wake up when it's way too late. And I think the poison generated by this process is called, well, I don't care, you know. I don't care, and I'm sorry when I say so here. It's a damned kind of I don't care. This is the biggest danger for democracy. There are too many people who don't care, people who just shrug their shoulders, and too many who don't do anything, who are not willing to do anything. And let me be very clear. Giovanni Falcone, he was not indifferent. Giovanni Falcone, he clearly showed how democratic structures are destroyed slowly, and he took action. He's one of those who took action. And he showed, and I relate to what the Lord Mayor said, an individual can change something. And in the case of Giovanni Falcone, an individual can also change the world. And the same goes for Roberto Saviano. Ladies and gentlemen, his book is powerful. Otherwise, he wouldn't be in danger. His book is powerful because he works against those who count on indifference. And this is what I say when I state the book is powerful. And this is why the book is the first thing that is prohibited or destroyed when dictators take power. And here I say a strong democracy needs a kind of diverse culture. And the diversity of culture since 75 years in Germany has become part of a book, a very special book. And this book is our basic law. How lucky we are to have it. And it shows never again a democratic constitution is to be abused. Never again people should be ostracized or persecuted. Never again dignity should be taken away from people. Never again people should become objects of government action. The never again, I'd like to repeat this today, only works if it is the case that we really fill the values written down in the book with life. Otherwise, they are only printed words, because nothing that we find in the basic law happens on its own. It's nothing you can take for granted. No, ladies and gentlemen, it takes citizens, and I would like to stress this, it takes institutions filling it with life and implementing it. And Frankfurt Book Fair, since 75 years, has made a very valuable contribution for this. And this is why I'd like to thank all those who make this event possible and fill it with life. I think all of us feel very clearly in these troubled times that such spaces of freedom, dialogue, and democracy are more important than ever before. And in this sense, I wish all of us a successful Book Fair 2024. Thank you very much.
Well, the book is in focus today and also in the next few days, and that's of course 100% right. But it's not just books which can tell stories. Music can too, and this is something which everyone has experienced for themselves. And the history behind those people who come on stage now is as follows. Once upon a time, there was a violinist, a guitarist, and a bassist, double bassist, and they were living for music. They loved experimenting with sounds, and they've formed a group in order to compose a song together, a song exclusively for the opening ceremony of the Frankfurt Book Fair. And if they have not lost their way in the backstage, then we'll experience them live. Veronika Paleva, Tommy Witjak, and Tim Roth with Frankfurt Calling.
jetzt eingeheddert mit meinen Hand. So groovy klingt Frankfurt. Richtig cool. Ich habe mich vorhin auch mal bei der Probe so ein bisschen vorsichtig über dieses Mischpult da gebeugt. Ich glaube, da sind mindestens 300 bunte Kabel drin. Ich habe mal die Finger davon gelassen, das ist auf jeden Fall sehr beeindruckend. Und das war auch noch nicht das Happy End unserer musikalischen Geschichte für heute Abend. Wir hören die 3 später nochmal hier auf der Bühne. Erstmal begrüße ich jetzt aber eine Frau, die sehr genau um die Bedeutung von Literatur in unserer Gesellschaft weiß. Als Staatsministerin für Kultur und Medien im Bundeskanzleramt gehört es auch zu ihren Aufgaben, sich für die Buchbranche einzusetzen, sie zu unterstützen, sie bestmöglich zu fördern und auch ein besonderes Augenmerk zu legen auf das hier alles. Auf die Frankfurter Buchmesse. Herzlich willkommen, Claudia Roth.
Lieber Juergen Boris, liebe Karin Schmidt-Friderichs, lieber Mike Josef, gibt vollkommen recht, jetzt darf man nicht ausgerechnet an der Kultur sparen. Helfen Sie mit, dass das auch bei den Entscheidenden ankommt. Dann tun Sie was Gutes. Lieber Boris Rhein, sehr geehrter Kollege Minister Alessandro Giuli, liebe Susanna Tamaro, lieber Stefano Zecchi, lieber Carlo Rovelli, liebe Musiker und liebe Demokratinnen und Demokraten. Ich zitiere: Alles auf dieser Welt kann man rückgängig machen, bloß nicht das Wissen. Das hat der großartige italienische Schriftsteller Alberto Moravia gesagt. Und für dieses Wissen steht das, was uns hier und heute zusammenbringt, das Buch. Bücher haben eine Revolution des Denkens angestoßen.
Books triggered a revolution in thinking. They were a decisive building block of enlightenment, especially since Gutenberg from Mainz paved the way for the quick and easy dissemination of thought in the form of a book. And this also set things in motion, and no banning was possible when it came to the freedom of thought. However, many attempts have been made to suppress and ban this tool for free thought, self-determination, and a diversity of opinions and perspectives. Also in our country for many centuries, and how terrible in the last century in Nazi Germany. The book, a symbol of free, diverse, and open thinking, is again under threat today. Fatwa against Salman Rushdie's satanic verses was dreadful. And today, in the Ukraine, books are burned by Russian aggressors who want to eradicate the Ukrainian culture. Authors, including Victoria Amelina and Volodymyr Vakulenko, have fallen victim to this criminal Russian war of aggression, and as many others, they paid for this with their death. Books are banned, authors are suppressed, persecuted, and imprisoned in Russia, Iran, China, and beyond. Even in Europe, we are seeing worrying trends when it comes to the freedom of the book, the freedom of speech. And here in Germany, booksellers and librarians tell me that anti-democratic forces want to dictate what they are supposed to put in their shop window and have in stock. We must not and we will not allow this to happen, dear Democrats. Books need freedom and democracy, just as democracy needs books. Books asking critical questions, showing new perspectives, imagining the previously unimaginable, books which are subversive and critical. They are an important driving force making democracies work and keeping democracies alive. They are public opinion, culture and art. Heinrich Böll rightly said poetry is dynamite for all the systems of this world. Books wake our curiosity regarding the unknown, and curiosity opens us up to the unfamiliar. The unfamiliar can generate fear and resistance, but the more we read, we learn, and definitely we know, the more meaningless fear becomes. Resentment becomes meaningless, and the more passionate our desire for the new, the unknown, and ideas becomes. This turns literature a tool against the simple truth of populism, against simplification, abbreviation, distortions, fake news, against hatred and agitation. And books enable us to be responsible citizens. They promote self-determination and successful coexistence in diversity and in respect and recognition of differences. This is what we need. This is what we need, especially in these times of our cultural fight. We urgently need this. We need and love books. We can't live without them, because books can simply be wonderful. They can send us on faraway journeys and bring us into other worlds. Without a pile of these on my bedside table, I personally would fall into dismay and I would sleep very, very poorly. And the good news here is that this power of the book also works when it comes to young people. This is proven by the great success of our Kulturpass for 18-year-olds. With over 1 million books purchased via the Kulturpass, each of them locally in a bookshop. So books are clearly the #1 among the many cultural offerings of the Kulturpass. And for you, for all of us, this is a very encouraging signal. And of course, the Kulturpass will continue next year. An important German magazine even put Frankfurt Book Fair on its cover, and it attempted a canon of the best German language books. Each of you in this room probably would have their own opinion regarding this canon, myself as well. And I wondered what it would look like in terms of the rich and diverse literary output of a country whose authors have shaped literature in Europe and around the world. Italy, yes. A place of longing, a country that makes people dream, that stands for the best times of the year, a country that has shaped generations of artists here, that has strongly influenced their artistic work their writing and their thinking. Goethe, as mentioned before, up until today is the unrivaled icon of this particular infatuation with Italy. And I looked at Goethe in the Städel Museum. We, as a Ministry for Culture and the Media, we have the Villa Massimo in Rome, where at the moment we are able to welcome Wilhelm Grossmann. So rich and powerful the cultural history of Italy is for Europe, just as exciting and powerful is the Italy of the present. I will not dare to generate a canon here, but I can be sure that our European literature and culture today, without Alberto Moravia, Elsa Morante, Grazia Deledda, Luigi Pirandello, Giuseppe Tomasi di Lampedusa, Italo Calvino, Primo Levi, Natalia Ginsburg, Umberto Eco, Dacia Maraini, Lara Cardeia, Elena Ferrante, Davide Enia, Dario Fo, Francesca Melandri, Mario Desiati, Roberto Saviano, Ijaba Dzeko, and of course the voices we will hear today, and many, many others, that our European literature and culture would not be much poorer. Crucial building blocks would be missing for the richness of European literature, and it's this diversity of perspectives and designs that characterize Italian literature and make it so powerful. And I'm all the more delighted to be able to discover this wealth of polyphony here at the Frankfurt Book Fair. Ladies and gentlemen, and this is where we need you, authors, publishers, editors, translators, booksellers. I thank you from the bottom of my heart for your work. And I know very well that times for literature, translators, the many smaller publishing houses that stand for the wealth of diversity in our country, for booksellers and the book market as a whole, are not easy at all. I'm very much aware of this. With a whole range of measures, I, together with my ministry, support your already important work with the Literature and Translators Fund, the Publishing Prize, the Bookstore Prize, with the guarantee that this government will stick to fixed book prices and the reduced VAT rate. And last but not least, with the Kulturpass I mentioned before. In a very difficult, and it really is a very, very difficult budget situation, I fought for culture, for the cultural budget. And I wasn't able to achieve everything that I thought was necessary for culture and the book and publishing industry. However, in the parliamentary budget debates, I will continue to fight to make more things possible. And there is another challenge here, AI. Let me quote, AI is both a discovery and a tool, a means of research and a socially transformative cultural technology. End of quote. This is what Daniel Kehlmann says, and he warns not to leave these far-reaching developments to their own devices. And I'm very much aware of this, especially when it comes to protecting the rights of creative people. Ladies and gentlemen,
gerade in diesen finsteren Zeiten
especially in these difficult times, we need this biggest celebration of books in the world, the Frankfurt Book Fair. It shows the entire width and diversity of books available in German-speaking countries, and at the same time, it's an open and broad window towards the world. Around 100 countries are represented here. 1,000 authors are going to show up. The Frankfurt Book Fair is a market for books, but especially it's a market for ideas and knowledge, a place of encounters and inspiration. It's a celebration of the beauty and the freedom of speech. It's a place and a lively forum for democratic exchange of opinions, views, and stories from all the corners of the world. And the specific feature of Frankfurt Book Fair is this colorful polyphony, is the power of diversity. And I look forward to this. Same as thousands of book-loving Democrats who will be visiting the book fair over the next few days. Let me quote. Silence mows down its victims every day. Silence is a deadly disease. End of quote. This is the warning by Natalia Ginsburg. This Frankfurt Book Fair is the exact opposite and the best remedy against this. And with this in mind, I wish the 76th Book Fair lots of success and wonderful events. Thank you.
Vielen Dank.
Thanks a lot, Claudia Roth.
Ich weiß nicht, ob's
I'm not sure whether you're the same as myself, but every year in the run-up to the book fair, when there is the announcement of which country is going to be the guest of honor, I'm always excited to can't really wait to see the motto the country will use. And I've went through the list of the last few years, and I stumbled over a few such slogans. 2013, Brazil, for example, had the slogan, "A country full of voices." A few years later, Georgia ran with a slogan, "Made by characters," also very cool. Last year we had Slovenia, the honeycomb of words, and it's still in the front of our minds. And this year the Italian motto is really very impressive, I find. Roots in the future. You have to think twice about it. I think this phrase is very interesting at many levels. It is looking back, it is looking forwards. It is also the question, what ties those two together, the past and the present. And it certainly means we have to remember that Italy is the first guest of honor. It was the first guest of honor of Frankfurt Book Fair in 1988. And today, 36 years later, we are enthusiastic. We've just heard a long list of authors quoted by Claudia Roth and also other speakers. We are very pleased to see that the Italian book scene is back in Frankfurt. I would like to welcome the Italian Culture Minister, Benvenuto, Alessandro del Giuli.
Onorevole Ministro di Stato,
Minister, dear Prime Minister, Lord Mayor of the city of Frankfurt, President of the Association of German Booksellers and Publishers, Director of Frankfurt Book Fair, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very pleased to be with you, and I'm going to go away to digress from my manuscript
La cultura
I would like to underline the
è la
following.
nostra
Culture
religione universale civile.
is our universal social
È un atto di
religion,
impietà.
and you must
E
not
dunque
stop it in
auspichiamo
its
tutti
tracks.
noi che un po'
And
di
so let's
luminismo,
hope
un po' di Aufklärung illumini la mente di tutti coloro che sono chiamati al momento della
that
scelta
the
di
spirit of
pensare
enlightenment
i soldi
will
della cosa pubblica,
dominate here
comportarsi nei confronti dei beni culturali.
when thinking about how to invest public
Sono
monies.
molto lieto di essere qui con voi
I'm very pleased to
per
be with
inaugurare
you
questa edizione della
today
Fiera del Libro di
in order
Francoforte,
to open
nella
this
quale
edition
l'Italia, dopo
of Frankfurt
36
Book Fair,
anni, lo dicevamo,
where
torna a
Italy is
indossare
returning
le
to
vesti
Frankfurt
di
after
nazione ospite
36
d'onore.
years as a guest of honor.
È un autentico privilegio per gli autori, per gli editori,
It is
per
a
le
special
istituzioni
privilege
italiane,
for Italian authors,
attraversare
publishers, and
il
institutions
palcoscenico della più importante fiera delle
to be present
del
at the
mondo,
most important
per
publishers'
raccontare
fair
l'Italia di oggi,
of the world.
la sua produzione
And
letteraria.
we are telling the story of present-day Italy, of its literary production and its culture. And for this, we are grateful to the government of the Federal Republic of Germany, represented by the State Minister for Culture and the Media, Claudia Roth, as well as thanks go also to Frankfurt Book Fair, headed by
Wolfgang Goethe,
Juergen Boris.
citato, e ovviamente
Johann Wolfgang Goethe was quoted, one of the greatest writers of all times, and he would certainly be pleased
tenuto così a cuore
that
il suo
his
ideale di tratta,
hometown
costruendo
has taken the idea of world literature taken it to heart, and has created a place where his beloved Italy and the players from all over the world are contributing to the exchange of publishers' rights and to the intellectual enrichment of people and nations. This social, non-material function is all the more important today when the court of reality has put some pseudo-certainties of globalization to the test, and it has returned to us, handed down a world full of fanaticism, conflict, and discrimination.
Forse troppo frettolosamente
Many people naively had thought these fanaticisms and discrimination were the province definitely of the last century. It is an age, today is an age,
ci ha reso spesso più liberi
when the spread of the media and sources of information have made us freer and more active, but not always wiser.
un'epoca in cui
It's a time
la cultura
when culture
la più potente risorsa per la paideia
remains the most powerful resource for the paideia of our youth, and where culture is the best antidote against all forms of violence and extremism,
ricordato a settembre
as we recalled in September at the meeting of G7 culture ministers in Naples.
se sul piano semantico cultura è civiltà
At the semantic level, culture is civilization. At the level of relationships, culture means understanding the other and having a dialogue between plural and dynamic identities by exercising critical intelligence without any undertones of prejudice. In this area of shifting borders, Italians feel at ease. We, as Italians, are the heirs of a universalist thinking, ranging from Roman antiquity to the present day, via humanism and Renaissance. It's always been aimed at the person at the center. And it means that we can look beyond our national borders without giving up the centrality of the idea of the nation-state. And all this in order to overcome the arrogance of nations and the arrogance of scholars, according to the teaching by Giambattista Vico, in the conviction that there are no immutable, crystallized, final forms of political and civil order. This refers back to the notion of responsibility. This inexhaustible mix of watchfulness and shared moral tension, which makes every community, also our literary community, into the inner law of each individual. So we refer back to this heritage using the title Roots in the Future, which characterizes the Italian participation at this book fair. We start from our roots, our history, our cultural identity, in order to present a contemporary literary production which lives off these roots. But what are the roots we are talking about here? I may say that we are here in order to confirm the central importance of what can be called solar thinking, the meeting point between the stubbornness of ideologies, a kind of fight between different ideas, which dissolves in the southern light of Mediterranean spirit, the light which is so dear to the best German aesthetic tradition. It is the kind of light which makes the philosophy of the border compatible with the ideas of justice and freedom. The cooperation, which was coordinated by the special representative of the government, Mauro Mazza, makes it possible for us to come up with a collage of Italian culture, a synthesis between our rich intellectual tradition of the past and the literary proposals which bring this heritage of our present up to date. The Italian pavilion will be a place of encounter, of comparison, expressing the heterogeneity of visions and standpoints which are the hallmark of our cultural pluralism, a feature which results from the special historic ups and downs of a nation which can be proud of its millennial heritage, but the institutional unity has been achieved only in recent times, just like Germany, compared with the national experience of the old continent. The Book Fair 2024 shows that the Italian publishing has a strong, open and pluralist presence, and the solidity of our industry is also showcased. We've got a dynamic and growing reality. The rights sold to other countries has quadrupled in the last 20 years, and we are very much oriented towards internationalization in order to make the wealth of Italian cultural contents better known at international markets. I am confident that the intense meeting program in the Italian pavilion will raise a more benevolent interest in our contemporary literary production. The fact that in the whole world there is a high level of interest in our culture and also our language, which of course is supported mainly by literature, encourages us. Literature is, of course, one of the most important vehicles. Despite its limited territory, Italian is one of the most studied languages of the world. All this in an increasingly global perspective, where more than 250 million people, most of whom do not have a personal or family tie to our countries, but they adopt the values and lifestyles which also are the characteristic of our culture. The German audience is certainly amongst those who are best familiar with Italian authors in a spectrum of predilections which ranges from the established canon and classics to the names of the most popular current authors, living authors. And also Italy and Germany are linked by a synergy of publishing which is as old as humanism and the beginnings of the modern book. And later, Goethe and the cultivated Central European travelers of Grand Tour also benefited from this cultural heritage. And they have really spread the dissemination of our culture. So for them, there are no borders. I could also quote a very famous picture by Friedrich Oberbeck, which pays tribute to the personal linking Overbeck with Franz Pforr, and so on and so forth. This was also reflected in the arts. So we have a joint mission, our two nations, which have achieved unity at a late stage. Let me digress again, because it's not enough to hark back to works of art or quotations, which everyone knows probably.
Preferisco citare alcuni passi di Carlo Levi, un intellettuale antifascista.
Let me also quote Carlo Levi, an anti-fascist intellectual who was persecuted. And in a book which I was given by a left-wing intellectual with whom I had arguments in the past, Tommaso Montanari, and in his book, he tells us what unites Germany and Italy and all the nations which want to defend their own culture. Carlo Levi writes,
il patrimonio culturale inteso come unità inscindibile di paesaggio.
That we are all united by our cultural heritage, history and arts. We have an autobiography of our nation, and Levi says, when we talk about Italy, that is great, but also is complicated. And that's true for all nations. And this is probably also what unites us in these moments and in historical moments. Of course, I also would like to quote Thomas Mann and The Magic Mountain, one of the most important European masterpieces of the 20th century, where the relationship between the protagonist Hans Katop with his mentor, Lodovico Settembrini. Here, what links our two nations together is very much highlighted. Has always been a link between Germany and Italy and its cultures, and you can see that also through the fact that there are lots of Italians in Germany who are well integrated in German society. And the Italian government is making a new effort now by supporting the translation of Italian works into German, and we want to strengthen the literary sector. We are convinced that the intensification of these relationships does not just mean investment in the quality and quantity of our cultural dialogue, it also means investment into the future of the book as a bulwark of people against ignorance and fanaticism. I would like to invite you to visit the Italian pavilion, which was masterfully designed by Stefano Zecchi. We can see a typical Italian piazza, which expresses the feeling of togetherness, which reflects the spirit of the Italian nation. Here, our authors will meet guests, cultural representatives from all walks of life and all over the world, who are going to enrich these days of the book fair. In this context, I think it is not inappropriate to also point out my institutional task as being the culture minister, who represents the inalienable freedom of expression in every which form, even if this expression of opinion runs against the government which I have the honor to represent. What I wish is that there should be harmony and unity And as we talk about harmony as the language of the soul, which does not know any borders, we would be pleased if you could also participate in the musical performances which are offered by Italy in these few days in Frankfurt in order to accompany our special presence at this edition of the book fair. Finally, let me also make a hint at the difficulties of this present time, the urgent need for dialogue and peace, just peace, which is shown to us every day. I do not know whether it is possible to find appropriate answers to the excesses of our times in literature, but reading about our past errors and horrors forces us to be confident about the future by clinging to our sense of the tragic and to the perception of any great civilizatory glamour, which is characteristic of the human sense, which Boris Strauss called the organ for the close and distant past. Let me close with the words by Strauss, quotation by Strauss: all great exaltations of the heart take place in the revisited past, and if you take away the sense of the past, you end up in a very bitter comedy without space and time. Thank you very much for your attention. I wish everyone the best of success.
Zu so einer Eröffnungsfeier der Frankfurter Buchmesse gehören viele Worte. Das liegt in der Natur der
Sorry,
Sache.
the microphone
Richtig so, aber ich habe es vorhin
didn't work
versprochen.
properly.
Wir kommen
Okay,
aus dieser
so
Welt der Worte.
thank you very much and grazie. And I promised before that we leave the world of words and again dive into the world of synthesizer and drum machines, loops, pitches and grooves again, a mixture of krautrock, jazz and electro, or in a nutshell, we dive into the music of Veronika Palejeva, Tomek Witiak and Tom Roth. And this piece was composed for this evening and it is called Fair Funk. Enjoy.
klingt. Also,
So that's how
weil wir jetzt gerade schon beim Thema sind,
these
würde ich Sie
musicians
alle
sound. And
einmal
since we're talking about music, I would like
bitten,
to
sogar die Augen zu
ask you to contemplate and maybe close your eyes
Land ist ja schon
and
häufig
meditate. And
einfach einmal zu fragen,
we've heard about favorite destination being Italy, and ask ourselves what you hear when you listen to Italy. How does Italy sound for
hören
you?
Sie, ich weiß nicht, auch eine Canzone, ist es Musik?
Maybe a
Ist es eine
canzone.
Piazza in der
Maybe
Mittagssonne?
makes you think about a piazza, or the bubbling of tomato sauce,
Vespa, die vorbei
or the sound of a Vespa which passes by, or church bells, or the
auf jeden Fall sicher.
waves
Spätestens nach
splashing
diesem
against the
Messetag
rocks
werden wir alle
by the
beim
sea.
Gedanken an Italien
And
sicherlich auch
the fair days
die
will
umgeblättert
always
werden,
also think
denn
about book
alle
pages
zusammen
which are going
tauchen
to be
in den
turned
Tagen ein in die
round
Schönheit
or
der
turned over,
italienischen
because we're going to
Kultur.
delve into the beauty of Italian culture and literature. And it's about beauty, really. And the question as to how we can preserve beauty, that's the theme of the first speaker, Italian author speaker today. He is an author and writer. He is taught as a professor at various universities of Italy. And now he's here. Welcome, Stefano Zecchi. Ladies and gentlemen, the title of my speech is Living Beauty. Beauty teaches us to be tolerant. My language is Italian, so I will read my speech in Italian, which is also a great language, of course. Don't you think, Minister? So let me quickly tell you a story, or rather, it is Ivan Karamazov who is telling the story to his brother. We are in 15th century Spain, in Seville, at the time of the Inquisition. Jesus returns to earth in order to preach freedom and love, which will save mankind from evil. However, the Grand Inquisitor arrests him. And when Jesus is in prison, he says Jesus is a grave danger for people who are weak and full of vice and do not know what to do with their freedom, which doesn't give them any certainty. Instead, they want order and security. They want to bow to a strong authority, protecting them from the dangers of free will, which is promoted by Jesus. At the end of his indictment, the inquisitor tells him that he would be sentenced to death on the next day. Jesus quietly listens to the inquisitor's charges and then kisses his old, bloodless lips. At this point, we have to ask ourselves who this Jesus is, who comes back down to earth. Of course, he doesn't return to earth in order to kiss the inquisitor, but to provoke him and also to provoke us by giving us a task: to always seek beauty. Man, writes Dostoevsky in Demons, can live without science. He can live without bread, but he cannot live without beauty. And in The Idiot, we find the all too famous and often misunderstood statement, beauty will save the world. Hippolyte, the nihilist character who doesn't believe in this, asks sarcastically, but which beauty will save the world? Exactly, which beauty? It cannot be the ephemeral beauty of appearances, of vanities, of whims. But what then? No one can answer this. It is our task to find the answer. We must face up to this dilemma. A few decades before these Dostoevsky texts, Goethe gave us the right clue in a scene from his Faust. Faust finally fulfills his wish to meet Helena the beautiful and to love her body. The Gothic man, Faust, the man of Nordic fogs, loves Helena, who is the softness of classic perfection, and Euphorion is the fruit of their union. From his mother, he inherits a feeling for beauty, the serene vision of life, a sense of melody and rhythm. From his father comes the yearning for eternity, for freedom, pride, his pride, the courage of his dreams, the power which leads to action. Euphorion is poetry. He is the new Hermes. Why Hermes? Who is Hermes? He is the god of metamorphosis, who is able to convert the essences of something into a completely different existence. Little Hermes, recently born and still on his bedstead, sees a turtle passing by. He looks at it, follows its slow and cumbersome passage with his eyes. Then he grabs it, holds it in his little hands to have a better view of it. Then he kills it with a quick and cruel gesture. He painstakingly eviscerates it, and having made 3 strings from its entrails, attaches them to its hollow shell, and in this way he turns an animal which is closest to the Tartarus underworld, the dark underworld, which moves in the most clumsy way and looks most monstrously. He turns it into a very delicate instrument with a very divine sound, the lyre. Like a skillful connoisseur, he makes the strings of his admirable invention resonate to accompany himself, singing the praises of his mother, Maya. And for the first time, people on earth hear the song of poetry. Let's now return to Euphorion, the new Hermes, emerging from Goethe's verses. He doesn't survive his wish for eternity and freedom. With his little wings, he wants to fly upwards, higher and higher. He is daring, indifferent towards danger. His father, Faust, admires him for his courage, but his mother, Helena, is terrified at the risks he is taking with his foolhardy flight. He is overambitious and too weak. His daring was greater than his strength. He falls down to earth and dies. Helena can only accept her grief by returning to Hades. Her body disappears, but her dress and veil are left in Faust's hands. Hold on to what is left from all that, Helena tells him. Help yourself to the high, inestimable Faber and lift yourself up. It will quickly carry you above all common things. This veil, this dress, symbolize a beauty which does not have Apollo's sunlight, able to fill the singing with perfection and harmony, but it is the veil of secrets, of shadows wrapped around the pictures, a beauty which is a far cry from Apollo's symmetries, but full of mysterious fascination, born from metamorphous intuitions, which will be the horizon of that modern art which rejects the irrelevance of its meaning, an art which, although far removed from Apollo's perfection, doesn't intend to go without depicting living beauty. Italy's artistic heritage shows this eternal, ever-changing beauty from the classics to Renaissance and Romanticism to the present day in its cultural institutions, such as the Maxi in Rome, the National Museum of 21st Century Artists, or the Venice Biennale, which are centers not just for exhibitions, but also for the aesthetic education of young people. Western man will not stay in the moment of his life. He will continue to act and subordinate contemplation to action, for that is his destiny. But if he doesn't accept action as a goal unto itself, if he rejects the nihilism of pure action, he will remember the Weimar genius celebrating Italian art in his great works, and he will recognize that this culture opens up the possibility to imagine a world which is different to the one we live in. So finally, we return to Karamazov when Jesus comes back to us on earth. The kiss he gives the Inquisitor is his challenge to nihilism, the real intellectual illness of our age, a challenge to a subservient, indifferent mankind, which instead is obliged to find beauty in the deep and spiritual meaning of being human. Beauty is the omnipresent and metamorphous condition of resurrection, which transforms and revolutionizes our existence. It is the force born from nothingness, from the brutality of evil. Creating beauty is not the exclusive privilege of the artist, the scientist, working for the good of mankind. It is also in quiet work and anonymity of so many everyday heroes who work to help others. That's also beauty. Education for beauty in design, utopian, and knowing how to see beauty in differences beyond deception and opportunism. Those who have learned to respect what is beautiful will respect the face of the other without hurting it, without destroying it. The courage to find what unites us in our differences, what facilitates confrontation in mutual respect for different ideas, is the beauty called democracy. Thank you.
Fate has more imagination than ourselves. When you think you are in a hopeless situation, when you reach the peak of not hoping any longer, then all of a sudden things will change, and all of a sudden, surprisingly, you live a new life. This is a great phrase, isn't it? This is only one of the great phrases that more than 16 million worldwide have read. It comes from the novel Go Where Your Heart Takes You. Apparently, many of you have read it. It was published in the mid-1990s and is included in the list of 150 important books that have a lasting impact on Italian history. A literary sensation, and this was just the beginning of a great career of our next speaker. Welcome, Susanna Tamaro.
Vor Jahren hatte ich eine japanische Leserin zu Gast, die in Italien verliebt war. Wir hatten einen ganzen Nachmittag über verschiedene Denkmäler besucht. Wir kamen in die Basilika von
who was in love with Italy. She had learned our language in a course on the radio and was fulfilling a lifelong dream by traveling there. When we were out and about in Rome, I was surprised by the fact that she knew the history, the monuments and the streets of the city better than I did. In the afternoon, we went to the Basilica di San Grisogno to cool off a little. It was empty and quiet and was in partial shade. While looking at the floor with cosmata work, she suddenly put her hands in front of her mouth and whispered, "It's already too much." Whenever I'm supposed to talk about my beloved country, this expression is the first thing that comes to mind. There's really too much of everything in Italy, too much history, art, architecture, too much beauty wasted with full hands, too much disorganization for my Austro-Hungarian soul, and also too much good cuisine. I felt the same as my Japanese friend when I entered the Basilica of Assisi at the age of 16. The frescoes by Giotto, the diffuse light filtering through the windows, the gentle landscape, all of this transported me to another dimension of existence. A dimension that I had never been able to experience in my war-stricken borderland. It was the first time I had visited the true heart of Italy. I had hitchhiked there, attracted by the fame of Francis of Assisi. He was a rebel like me. Like me, he sought horizons beyond the everyday things. At the time, I didn't know that my life would be in close contact with the words. I didn't know at the time that this longing for a different light would consume me, just as it consumes all those who set out in search of it. But what kind of time is it we live in? It is a time when we are drowning in words. They swirl indistinctly and annoyingly around us like a swarm of small flies. And there is no silence. And this way, we are like castaways in a churning sea. Questions are born out of silence. And what is man when he no longer asks questions? A being that has cut off its roots. So why deny it? We are on an extremely dangerous ridge of history. The wars that should have disappeared according to a brilliant vision of the new millennium have multiplied everywhere. We were told that they would at least be intelligent, but they are the usual senseless, bloody and cruel wars as always. Dante defines Earth as the clod that makes us so cruel. And not only have we not abandoned the cruelty, but we have increased it even further by ever more sophisticated technologies. Was it not perhaps Ettore Schmidt's pen name Italo Svevo who described the situation 100 years ago at the end of Zeno's Conscience with the prophetic spirit often characteristic of writers? Perhaps we will return to salvation through an outrageous disaster triggered by explosive devices. There will be a tremendous explosion no one will hear. And Earth will wander in its resumed nebulous form in the sky, which will be free of parasites and disease. A writer, if he is one, is able to fight the demons without ceasing and to hope, even in the darkest moments, that the light will shine at a distant point of the abyss and that this very light, which he has followed so courageously with his words, will be able to illuminate the minds and hearts of his readers. I was born in Trieste, at the time the last outpost of the West, when smoke was still rising from the ruins of the war. In literature, I had 4 teachers: Kafka, Rilke, Canetti, and Isaac Singer. Kafka for his ascetic approach to writing, Rilke for his ability to enter into a dialogue with the invisible. Canetti for the clarity of his thoughts, Singer for his generous passion to tell us about the small and large human weaknesses. But no doubt, after this long apprenticeship in the culture of Central Europe, I would never have written the books I have written without moving to the heart of Umbria, without seeing the sun illuminate the mosaics of Orvieto Cathedral from my garden every evening, and the cathedral itself rising like a ray of light towards the sky. It's true, everything is too much in Italy, and this too much is closely linked to the existence of a relationship to light that is unique in the world. And in Umbria, where Benedetto da Norcia was born, who was so dismayed by the decadence of Rome that he withdrew into a grotto on Monte Taleo 700 years before St. Francis, while still a young man. After 3 years in the darkness, he emerged with his mission clearly in mind, to found a small community of monks whose task it would be to preserve the knowledge of the ancestors with their ora et labora. It's not the breathtaking culture expressed by Dante in the Divine Comedy, also the merit of the work of thousands of Benedictine monks who for centuries copied the works that shaped Western civilization. Literature and poetry, if this is what they really are, save lives. Primo Levi testifies to this in Is This a Human Being? When he recounts how Dante's tercets, he learned only reluctantly at grammar school, appeared to him in his mind like a lifeline in the hell of Auschwitz. Great literature doesn't age. It's a friend that accompanies us through the centuries. And perhaps today, more than ever before, we need this unselfish friendship. But in addition to the Divine Comedy, Italy has given the world another great book, Pinocchio by Carlo Collodi. The fact that it's considered a children's book and therefore light fiction obscures its prophetic vision. Don't we live in a boundless land of toys today? A world where it's all about having fun, all around the clock, where the noise is so disturbing that, as Collodi writes, you have to stuff cotton wool into your ears to avoid going deaf. A country where people make fun of duties as well as efforts and endeavors that were necessary to grow and to give meaning to their lives. Everyone sleeps at night, and I never sleep, sings Collodi's coachman when he takes the children to the magic land in his carriage. And it's the same coachman who, after 5 months of boundless fun and games, arrives in Wonderland to pick up Lucignolo and Pinocchio. In the meantime, they have turned into donkeys and are now consigned to their tragic fate. Literature is the antithesis of Toyland because it demands commitment, urges us to get to know other worlds, to harbor doubt and curiosity, and, above all, an open mind. And again, it's literature through Dante's verses that shows us the way to liberation. Behold, are we not worms, created not to bear the angelic moth? Well, we forgot that. Our life is a path of continuous transformation. We are born and we crawl like a caterpillar, but within us we carry the ability to fly. Great literature is about this very metamorphosis, about the wings that we all have, even if we no longer know. We have the choice of staying in the chrysalis, crawling on the ground, or fly. But to get off the ground, we have to yearn for heaven, for the beauty and the mystery hidden in the cosmos, and for all the wonderful richness of living surrounding us. The beauty we cannot see and with self-mocking tenacity, we keep destroying it. But we are unable to perceive the gift of grace that is inherent in even the smallest of creatures. This ability was bequeathed to us by St. Francis, who shortly before his death, when he was already blind, dictated the following words. Praise be to you, my Lord, for Sister Moon and the stars. In the sky, you have formed them clear and precious and beautiful. Amazement, surprise, and gratitude. Those are the remedies our time needs to save us from the dangerous omnipresence of technology. To escape the fate of the donkeys and the calls of the tireless coachman who wants to turn all of us into obedient donkeys. We, on the other hand, have to pay attention to real wisdom, the inner light that we have deep in our hearts. Only wisdom can make us look up from the tablet PC and raise our eyes to the heavens and echo within us the extraordinary words with which the Divine Comedy ends. Love keeps the sky and the stars in motion.
Vielen Dank, Susanna Tamaro. Und vor unserem letzten Redner hier heute Abend gibt es eine Frage an Sie alle. Wissen Sie, was weiße Löcher sind? Genau, das Gegenteil von schwarzen Löchern. Wird aber die allermeisten in diesem Saal jetzt auch noch nicht so richtig weiterbringen, diese Antwort. Wer aber genauer wissen möchte, was dahinter steckt, der kann zu den Büchern unseres nächsten Gastes greifen. Er ist Schriftsteller, aber er ist auch Physiker von Weltrang. Die Irish Times hat ihn mal als Poeten der Physik bezeichnet. Und immer wieder meldet er sich zu kulturellen und auch politischen Debatten zu Wort. So auch heute. Herzlich willkommen, Carlo Rovelli.
Last talk. I'm going to speak English because I want to maximize the possibility of communicating, and I'm sorry I don't speak German. My German is far too minimal. We are here to celebrate books. Some of us write books, some of us publish, edit books. Most of us read books. So books are our job, our source of income, entertainment. But of course, books are far more than that. I would say that books, since the dawn of civilization, are where the ideas are presented, where they're found, where they spread. But ideas is probably not the right word here. It's far more than ideas that books convey. They convey ways of thinking, readings of reality, ideals, narratives, dreams, including the dreams that make up reality. And we humans live in a world of narratives, in artificial entities like laws, institutions, system of beliefs, countries. And these worlds of words are constantly modified, shaped by books. Great books plural, have made civilization, singular, from the Veda to Kant, from Genji to Karamazov. They have taught us how to think about reality and how to think about ourselves. But it's not just the great books of the past that continuously shape reality. It's also the small books and all the books of the present that keep redesigning reality. I have been writing mostly about science. And in my books, what I've tried to do is to illustrate how science modifies our understanding or vision of reality. But I think that all books do that. We read from Mickey Mouse to Noam Chomsky, and the space of what is possible keep changing around us. And because of that, books guide our action and determine our destiny. I believe that this awareness should give us, us here in the trade of books, a profound sense of responsibility. Because each book is a brick toward the construction of the future. Today, the destiny of each one of us is a destiny of us all. The challenges we face them together around this small spinning planet. And this makes all of us around the globe members of a single community of destiny. The human tribes, plural, are now a single tribe, singular, the human tribe. And it is toward this single human tribe with a common destiny that I believe we must recognize our responsibility. The world faces challenges. We have heard repeatedly this afternoon, an ecological crisis, dramatically real, a growing and previously unseen concentration of wealth. Extreme poverty has started to increase anew after having gone down for a while. We have overabundant food, and yet many hundreds of millions of us do not have enough food to eat. And worst of all, belligerence is spiraling up. We see it every day in the news. Military spending is shooting up everywhere. We, the human idiots, waste a colossal amount of resources to build weapons and use them, generating an immense amount of suffering for millions today, right now, in Eastern Europe, Middle East, in Africa, and in other places maybe to come. We said never again, and we're doing it again. People are dying now, at this very moment. Peoples are being exterminated, countries are being destroyed. And why we do that? The charitable answer is that because we are stupid. The less charitable answer is because in this way some of us become richer. If this was not enough, the madness of the nuclear catastrophe is looming any day closer. A few decades ago, in the middle of the Cold War, the Soviet Union and the United States, in spite of the great ideological difference, talked to reduce the total number of nuclear weapons, nuclear warheads they had, by nearly 90%, very wisely. Today, very stupidly, we're doing exactly the opposite. We are furiously building new atomic bombs in large numbers and missiles and deploying them around anew, including, unfortunately, this very country, which I used to consider wise. Instead of seeing ways to work together, to address the common problems, instead of negotiating misunderstandings, seeking points of equilibrium around the inevitable differences and conflicts, we consume our energies trying to overpower one another, to make our group, or group of countries, more dominant, more powerful, We want to crush perceived enemies. We want to win. Blind to the fact that those we call our enemies are the very friends we should work with. We blame one another. We focus on the speck of the eyes of the others and ignore the plank in ours, and we massacre one another today. We say we fight because we're different, because we have different values. It is a lie. We fight because we're similar, not because we're different, for power, domination, wealth, privilege. And then we soil our best values, democracy, liberty, freedom of speech, anti-racism. We soil our best values by using them as a justification, as a hypocritical cover for our, allow me, miserable and wretched defense of our power, or the imperial power above us. We say we are defending ideals, when the obvious reality is that we are defending privilege and supremacy. The majority of the people of this increasingly small earth are asking to be one single tribe. The one resisting are the rich few that defend privilege with violence. I have been invited here to represent my country. I love my country. I love Italy. Who wouldn't love Italy? But I do not want to chant the greatness of my country. Italy is great, doesn't need me to chant it. I want to chant the greatness and the beauty of my tribe, which is a human tribe as a whole. Because the community of destiny of humankind is what matters today for the future of us all. Here, we only do books, no more than books. But this is a temple of books, and therefore is a temple of ideas. It should be the temple of intelligence. So, allow me to close with this. Do I ask too much if I ask us all, us in the trade of books, to engage in using our intelligence to see that we need for our own good to recognize that humankind is now this single tribe, that we need to accept differences, to stop demonizing one another and blaming the others, and start learning from one another, building together a shared global community for this little wandering and spinning planet which is our only precious home, the Earth. Please, write books that teach us how to stop the current madness. Please publish books that give us ways of thinking about us all as a universal community. Please remember the responsibility. See the communality of our destiny. I wish that the book community that we form here be at the height of playing the civilizing role that books have played along 5 millennia of civilization before it's too late. I believe that a better world is possible, and I believe that books need to be its roots. Thank you.
So, ich glaube, in den vergangenen, sagen wir mal, gut
Well, I think in the past almost 2 hours, one thing has become very clear.
und die wirklich sehr, sehr,
They
sehr
do
großen
exist,
Themen
the small and big issues,
bewegen und auch
very big
müssen,
issues
die
that
uns auseinandertreiben,
move us
aber
as a
auch das,
society,
was wir
sometimes divide us as well,
eine Sache,
but
die uns alle hier
one
vereint,
thing
das ist
unites us here, and this is our love of books, and we want to celebrate it. But in order to celebrate it, we have to open this book fair. We will do so, and the honor goes to
Ja, Hammer.
Karin Schmidt-Friderichs with her hammer.
Und von mir an dieser Stelle,
Please join us on stage. And from my side, before we hear the hammer later on, you see this immediately after the opening. Some guests of honor have to leave the room, so it will be very busy here. And I'd like to urge you, sometimes in the past it didn't work properly, please remain seated and wait a minute before I bid you farewell. Now we look forward to the following. First of all, an applause for Mona Amesian. Thank you very much.
Vielen Dank.
Thank you.
Und dann möchte ich in dem
And
Glauben an die zivilisierende Kraft
being convinced of the civilizing power of books, I would like to herewith open the 76th book fair with a hammer that is almost 200 years old. And with this, it has been opened, the 2024 Frankfurt Book Fair. All the guests here are invited to join us for a drink in the lobby or to go to the forum for the opening of the Pavilion of the Guest of Honor. Thank you to all of those who joined us on stream from wherever. I wish all of us a great evening and a wonderful book fair. Thank you very much.